Olá, queridas irmãs, queridos irmãos. Nós ficamos muito felizes de voltar até a sua presença, até o seu coração, com o Alimento para a Alma. Já tratamos de vários temas ligados à conscientização daquilo que realmente é importante a gente saber, no que diz respeito ao alimento para o corpo, à saúde, à manipulação da mente, à hipnose. Vamos apresentar para você agora um estudo de uma pessoa que não é espírita, mas que está há várias décadas debruçada sobre esse mesmo tipo de influenciação, essa mesma ação subliminar. David Icke é um inglês que tem feito palestras, tem escrito livros há muitos anos. Você talvez já tenha até visto essa imagem, a figura de David Icke. Ele fez uma participação na televisão inglesa, gravando vídeos sobre um tema que explica para o telespectador como as grandes estruturas são instrumentos de uma minoria oculta para produzir as respostas que elas desejam, que esta minoria quer. Como é que isso funciona? Este programa se chama Dot Connector. Conectando os pontos. Vamos traduzi-lo assim. Ele é um programa longo, tanto que ele foi apresentado em 9 partes. Você vai ver isto no endereço eletrônico, caso você queira continuar a assistir, porque hoje nós vamos apresentar, o nosso programa Alimento para a Alma vai apresentar para você, hoje e na próxima semana, apenas o primeiro programa. Cada um dos 9 tem 54 minutos aproximadamente. Mas nós vamos fornecer a você o endereço onde você, na internet, encontrará, já com legenda em português, uma legenda que não é das melhores, porque esta legenda deste programa que você vai assistir hoje e da semana que vem, fomos nós que pusemos, nós melhoramos a legenda. Mas os outros nós ainda não tivemos tempo de fazer. Então você tem, nesse endereço que você vai ver no nosso GC, você tem essa informação onde encontrar os outros programas, para ir assistindo. Dá para entender, mesmo que fique um pouquinho truncado em alguma palavra que você não compreenda, que a tradução não foi bem feita ou não foi adequada, dá para você entender o todo, mas é muito importante que você observe isso. Então, tão importante que nós pegamos o primeiro programa, dividimos em 2 partes e hoje vamos mostrar a você a primeira. Na semana que vem, nós vamos para a segunda, que termina o programa Dot Connector com David Icke número 1. Faltarão 8 e você vai ter que procurá-los. Nos nossos esforços de levar conhecimento, que ficam arquivados em nosso site Mensagem Fraternal, nós, com o tempo, na medida em que formos conseguindo terminar as legendas, melhorando-as, nós estaremos disponibilizando isso para que as pessoas possam ter acesso. Mas, por enquanto, nós estaremos trabalhando com este primeiro. Queremos que você preste atenção, porque ele vai explicar como que esses pontos são unidos, como que ele vai chegando a mostrar para cada um de nós esta ação deliberada que faz com que nós imaginemos que somos livres para decidir o que queremos, quando de verdade não somos. As pessoas decidem que vacina você vai tomar, você não sabe o que estão pondo em você. As pessoas decidem como vão produzir alimentos e você tem que comer. Você não sabe do que é feito. Você não sabe que radiações estão nele, que venenos puseram. As pessoas fazem os frangos depenados dentro das máquinas para que você depois coma crocante, aquele nuggets, achando que é o melhor alimento do mundo. E na verdade você não sabe como é feito. Você não tem ideia de como é produzida a roupa que você veste. Mas você veste, você acha que você é livre para comprar e nem assim. Você pode considerar-se tão livre por causa dos modismos que inventam. Preste atenção, saia da concha, saia de você mesmo. Veja só como as coisas são. Se você fizer uma pesquisa na internet, você verá que mais ou menos 10 grandes companhias controlam todas as marcas de alimento, de remédios, de produtos químicos, de produtos de limpeza com variações de marcas para parecer que você está tendo opções. E são 8, 9 grandes conglomerados que produzem as mesmas coisas, até para competir um com o outro. Imagina isto. Procure, pesquise, você vai se surpreender. Mas preste atenção no nosso primeiro bloco do programa do David Icke, Dot Connector, conectando os pontos, e conecte esses pontos, na sua cacholinha. O programa de hoje vai fazer o primeiro programa dele, dividido em 2 partes. Nós vamos apresentar hoje a primeira parte. Na semana que vem, não perca, hein? É a continuação deste programa com a segunda parte. E eu tenho certeza que você vai se interessar muito para poder procurar o restante. Obrigado pela sua audiência, obrigado pelos e-mails, pelas palavras elogiosas, pelas sugestões. Nós ficamos muito felizes de poder ajudar você a ter um alimento para a alma de qualidade. Muito obrigado e muita paz.
Hi there and welcome to the programme. My name is Richie Allen and this is David Icke Dot Connector, where every week I'll be talking to David Icke, where he'll be connecting the dots between all the various stories of the week, the week's events, the week's politics, the week's news. Without further ado, let's welcome David Icke. David.
Hi Richie, I thought, given it's the first programme, that I'd just set out the overall picture within which all these news stories are happening. Because I've been researching this now for the best part of a quarter of a century, and I've been to like 55 countries doing it over the years. And once you become known for putting this information out, you become a magnet. People say, I can now see a way to get this out into the public, so they come to me. And but putting it all together, and that, you know, over the weeks we'll be dot connecting many different things, dot connecting the nature of reality and putting that into the context of what's happening in the world. But I thought what we could do today is just put the basic structure together. And there's basically 2 things you need to know to understand the world in a different way. The key one is where the world is being taken. Because behind the scenes, and we'll go into this in detail over the weeks, there is a network of secret societies and semi-secret organizations, and organizations that we will know about in the public arena, but we won't know the true context in the public arena. And the structure can be likened to a spider's web. You've got the spider in the center of the web, and that's really deeply in the shadows, or deep in the rabbit hole, whichever you want to however you want to put it. And from that spider, as I will call it, the agenda for the world and the agenda for humanity comes out from across the web. So each strand in this symbolic web is a secret society, a semi-secret organization, or it is a known organization, but not in the context, like I say. So the strands immediately around the spider, they are the really exclusive secret societies. They're the ones that, some of them have no names, because if you have an organization and you don't give it a name, it's very difficult to pin it down and locate it. And the entry to that level of the spider's web is for only people who are absolutely in the know of what the game is. As you come out from that central point, out from the spider, you're going through the secret societies that are known, the Freemasons, the Knights of Malta, and the Knights Templar, etc., etc., the Jesuits. And then you're coming out and you reach a point in the web where the hidden, as I'll call it, the hidden part of the web kind of hits the cusp where it goes into the seen world. And that point, that cusp, has organizations that are semi-secret, like the Bilderberg Group, for instance, which was held in Britain, not far from here, north of London, this year. And the Bilderberg Group is no longer secret because although it was created officially and had its first meeting in 1954 at the Bilderberg Hotel in Holland, hence the name, what researchers and real journalists have done in the alternative media over these years is expose its existence, and it's exposed in great detail with the lists who actually has attended. The Bilderberg Group has major politicians, major corporate heads, major bankers, and people from NATO and all the rest of it, and European Union bureaucrats. And it's a place where there is coordination of the plan to be played out in the mainstream of society, in new legislation, laws, etc., and policies in general. But the Bilderberg Group is still pretty secret in the sense that we are not allowed to know what it discussed. But it was in the hidden. Now, because of the alternative media, it's been pulled onto this cusp where the hidden meets the seen. So through this network, and in the scene, I'm talking about governments, I'm talking about corporations, I'm talking about banks and banking networks. So the plan, the agenda for manipulating the direction of human society and human life comes from the spider in the hidden. And we'll go into detail over the weeks of what that spider really is. And it comes out through the secret organizations, the semi-secret organizations, and eventually it comes out into mainstream society in changes in laws and legislations and all the rest of it. Now, out in the scene, the vast majority of people working in government, vast majority working in corporations, vast majority working in banks, have no idea that the spider exists, never mind the web. And people say, don't they, oh, I don't know, I don't know what they're doing, but it's come down from on high. And you go, well,
all the time.
Where does that on high, where does it go? Where's it coming down from? And you can liken this structure not just to a spider's web, but to a pyramid, a compartmentalized pyramid, in the sense that if you look at any organization today, whether it's a bank, a government, a university, whatever it is, and certainly a secret society, they work with this compartmentalization, need to know structure. If you look at any organization today, it is very much like a pyramid, in the sense that there's the few at the top that know what that organization is really about, what its motivation is, what its agenda is. And the further you come down from that pyramid, peak, the capstone, you're meeting more and more and more and more people in the organization. But further you go down, the less and less and less they know about that. And what this structure does is it manipulates people through compartmentalized ignorance to introduce an agenda in its multifaceted forms that is enslaving them, is enslaving their children even more, and is enslaving their grandchildren even more, and yet they have no idea that that's what they're doing. Why? Because in this pyramid structure, you've got someone here working for a bank, and they've got someone here working for a corporation, someone here working for a government. Now, none of these people know the others exist, let alone their contribution, their contribution, and their contribution actually is all part of a pattern which is taking the world in a particular direction. The only people that know that are the few at the top who know how the whole thing works. And you see, one of the big things, Richie, and I completely understand it, is that people say, how can a few control the world? It's not possible. But if you start to understand the structure, which is the thing I set out to grasp right from the start, how is it possible? I know it's happening, but how do they do it? You find that as long as you can compartmentalize information and knowledge, you can get your target population to enslave itself through ignorance of the fact that that's what it's doing. So, for instance, you've got law enforcement. The agenda says we want an Orwellian state. And then down here, not understanding that, you've got people in uniforms and dark-suit administrators who are introducing that state constantly with more and more surveillance, more and more control. And they have no idea that that exists and there's an agenda behind it. They're told, oh, it's terrorism, give them any excuse, they'll believe it. Although not so much now, thank goodness. And what they're doing, these people, is enslaving their own children and grandchildren. If they realised they were doing that, they'd be horrified. But this structure means that they don't realise that. And one of the things that I've been doing over the years with the books, Connecting and the talks, is to take that and put it here so people can see actually what on high really is if you go deep enough or in this symbolism high enough. So that's the structure that allows this to be manipulated. So the next question is, where does this structure want to take the world? And what we are looking at is an ongoing attempt that goes back at least thousands of years, and there's a reason why it's gone over the thousands of years, and again we'll get into that in detail on another program, but I want to keep to the structure today. The process has been quite simple: to constantly centralize power in every area of our lives. Why? Because if there's great diversity of decision making, great devolved powers to make decisions that affect your community, that is a nightmare structure for a few, and compared with the global population, the people in full knowledge of what they're doing is very, very, very few, ridiculously few. But if you have that structure of devolved power, you are in a nightmare situation to centrally control everything, because how does the few keep control of all these decisions going on all these places all over the world? So the process has been the constant centralization of power. And so there was a time when we had a tribal situation in the world, and the tribes made decisions affecting the tribe. Then we had this very pivotal period where the tribes were brought together under something called nations and countries, and now a few at the center of the country, the nation, the government, is now dictating the lives of all the tribes which were independently deciding their own lives before. Then we started to move, and my goodness me, look what's happened in Europe. And we're doing it all over the world now with trade agreements and all these things. We're actually bringing the nations together in a centralized structure. And now the few at the center, for instance, of the European Union, are dictating the lives of all the countries, which were then dictating the lives of all the tribes, which at one time were deciding their own lives and their own societies, their own communities. And what this has done systematically is, at every step, it has created a situation where fewer and fewer and fewer people are able to dictate the lives of more and more and more people. And it reached the point some time ago now when we had to actually had a word for it: globalization. You know, I see people going on globalization protests and all that rest of it. But certainly for a long time, and still today with many of them, they think it's about just corporations wanting more and more power over the world. The corporations are not the origin of globalization. What's the origin is the spider in the center of the web. The corporations are the vehicle for it. Governments are the vehicle for it. Politicians are the vehicle for it. Only a few actually realizing it. And so the idea, and this is a big revelation in terms of understanding the world. The idea, or the question is, where do they want to take us? And what they're looking for is a structure, a world structure, in which the few are able to control the many absolutely fiercely and in an incredibly extreme way. And this is the structure. First of all, they want a world government that would dictate all political decisions and other decisions to every country or trading group like the EU. That would, the idea is the world government, and then under that you have the structure of the European Union and these other trade blocs, or actually union blocs, tyranny blocs, which are also planned in places like the United States and elsewhere in the world. And just as the European Union was evolved out of a free trade area, it's good for jobs, there's no political agenda here, so the same is going to be happening. It is happening from the free trade zone in America, NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and other free trade areas around the world.
Not good for jobs, though.
No, they're just stalking horses, Richie, for the stepping stone. Which I'll come to, the technique of the stepping stones to take us down this road. So they want a world government dictating to every country. So now basically you've got one table dictating to the world. They want a world central bank that would dictate all global finance. And they want a world army which is designed to impose the will of the world government on any country or area of the world that doesn't want to take those diktats. Also, they want a world currency which would be not cash, it would be purely electronic. And there are massive implications for freedom there, because at the moment, if you go into a shop and you hand over electronic money like a credit card, and the machine says, no, won't accept it, well, you can still pay cash. But when cash is gone, and cash is going out of society so quickly, and you know all these mobile phones, cashless, do it on your mobile phone, this is all part of the process, as quickly as possible, of creating the cashless society. Because if you go into a shop and you hand over electronic money, like I say, you can pay cash now. What about when the cash is gone and that computer says no to your electronic money? That computer is now dictating if you can purchase. It's dictating your life, your ability to do anything in a world dominated by money, in which money is choice.
We'll take a very quick break now. When we come back, we'll have more from David Icke. This is davidicke.connector. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to davidicke.connector. David Icke connecting the dots, bringing all the stories and the news of this week together. David, welcome back.
Thanks. So,
cashless society.
Yeah, where we were was this structure which this agenda is pushing the world towards. So and once you kind of have the understanding of the structure, the world makes total sense, because you can see all these decisions being made that are pushing us in that direction. So they want a world government, a world army, a world central bank, a world currency, and they want a microchipped population connected to a global computer system, for which there are enormous implications. And of course, as you say, the cashless society and the end of cash, so the computer rules okay. So that's where they want to go. And under that, they want this structure of unions, the European Union, of course, the most advanced at the moment. And under that would not even be countries. They want just regions, because they want to de-unify any unified response to this structure of power. And the idea is to create in that structure what I call the Hunger Games society. This is a society where the less than 1% at the top, who are running the whole show, including the banking system, are so wealthy it's beyond description. And the rest of the population is in a situation of being mega poverty. And I'm including in that the people that we would call pretty well off or middle class today. They want them in that position as well. People start to make sense of what's happening economically with that. And there are two techniques that they use overwhelmingly to take us in these directions. One I have been calling for a long time, problem, reaction, solution. It's devastating, and it's played on us every day. you want to change society. In other words, you want to change society to advance this agenda of control. But you know at each point where you want to knock this agenda on that you're going to get a lot of opposition for a lot of the things that you want to do. So you don't tell them straight, as my mother used to say. Don't tell them straight. You play problem, reaction, solution, which works like this. First of all, you create a problem. It could be a government collapse, it could be an economic collapse, it could be a terrorist attack, whatever. Whatever will give you the opportunity to change society as a result of it. You then tell the public, through an unquestioning mainstream media, the version of that problem that you want them to believe, i.e. people that couldn't fly a one-engine Cessnas suddenly manifested the ability to fly wide-body jets on 9/11 in ways that pilots that have been flying them for decades said they couldn't do. So the next point on problem, reaction, solution is the reaction. You want a reaction from the public of fear, of outrage, of intense emotion, and you want them to say, in effect, what are you going to do about it? Something must be done. And at that point, those who've created the problem and sold the villain, in whatever form it is, to the public, then say, okay, here's what we have to do as a result of this manufactured problem. And we go to the solution. And the solutions are that the agenda, whichever part of the agenda the problem relates to, will be advanced by changes in society. You look at 9/11, Richie, and you see a pivotal problem which has actually changed the face of the world in so many ways. All this surveillance, the war on terror, the invasions of countries, all justified in effect by that act.
Event.
Yeah, and if that had not have happened, manufactured problem, the world would be very different today, and this agenda would not be anything like as far ahead as it is. And the stablemate of problem, reaction, solution is what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. This is the stepping stone. You're at A and you know that you're going to Z. But if you're going big leaps, then people are going to look up from the game show, they're going to look up from the sport, and they're going to say, Ethel, what's going on? And so you don't do that. You go from A to C to D to E, and you do it in as big a leap as you think you can get away with, but not so big that where the direction is going, the pattern, the connections, the stepping stones, you don't want them to be obvious to people. Now, I spent the last 25 years nearly connecting those stepping stones and saying, hey, look where they're leading. And so if you look at the European Union, it started out as a free trade zone because after the Second World War, had you had someone come out and say, right, we want the political union and the centralisation of power in Europe, in the European Union. And people say, hold on, mate, we've just spent the last five years fighting to stop that with the Nazis. What are you doing? So they were never going to announce what they wanted, but what they've done, totalitarian tiptoe, is they've then started moving. And they've, do you know, if only we had a bit more centralisation of power, it would be much more coordinated and much more efficient on the go. And then eventually you had the Maastricht Treaty, which was a massive Rubicon in terms of the centralisation of power in Europe, and even more so with the Lisbon Treaty, which basically took anything worth the name in terms of power away from nation states. All this stuff is now just, in terms of politicians, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Well, you will if they agree. You ain't if they don't, because that's the structure and that's the law now. So through the stepping stones, we've had all these things. Globalization has been done stepping stones, more and more centralization of power, a bit more, a bit more, a bit more, and a bit more, and so it goes on. So that's the basic structure and the techniques of moving us forward in this agenda that people need to understand. And then you start to look at the world, and you start to see that this agenda is happening.